الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على المبعوث رحمة للعالمين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. أما بعد، فقد قال الله تبارك وتعالى في القرآن المجيد والفرقان الحميد بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إنما يريد الله ليذهب عنكم الرجس أهل البيت ويطهركم تطهيرا. صدق الله مولانا العظيم. أما بعد، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Sayyidina Zayd radiallahu anhu narrates that they were traveling with the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam when Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam came to a well which is referred to as Ghadir Khum, the well of Khum. And Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam then addressed the Sahaba radiallahu anhum at this well. And he said to them that innama ana basharum, that I'm but a human. And soon a messenger from your Rabb will come to me and I will respond to him. Meaning the angel of death will come and my life will come to an end. And I'm leaving with you two things. Awaluhu kitabullah, the book of Allah. In it there is guidance, there is light, there is illumination. And then the second thing he said, I'm leaving amongst you is Ahli Bayti, my Ahlul Bayt. And then Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, Udhakkirukumullahu fi Ahli Bayti. I remind you in the name of Allah with regards to my Ahlul Bayt. So these were amongst the final advices of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The question then arises as to who are the Ahlul Bayt? The Ahlul Bayt are undoubtedly the progeny of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the lineage that came from his four daughters, his honorable wives, and together with that, the progeny of Sayyidina Ali and his progeny, Sayyidina Aqil and his progeny, Sayyidina Ja'far and his progeny, Sayyidina Abbas and his progeny, the Banu Hashim. That is what forms the Ahlul Bayt. Now these days we hear people referring to themselves as lovers of the Ahlul Bayt. Yet they only choose one portion of the Ahlul Bayt, one of the daughters of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and they focus entirely on her and her lineage, and they say, we are the lovers of the Ahlul Bayt. And from those who form part of the Ahlul Bayt, the honorable wives, Hazrat Aisha, Hazrat Hafsa, they omit them from the Ahlul Bayt and even hate them, and they say, we are the lovers of the Ahlul Bayt. So who are really the lovers of the Ahlul Bayt? It is those who are from the Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah, who acknowledge and truly love all those who form part of the Ahlul Bayt. Now when we look at this very delicate issue of what had transpired in Karbala, then there are important historical events that we need to put into perspective so that we get the picture of what were the events that led up to the event that took place in the 61st year after Hijrah. So we begin with the Battle of Badr, which took place in the second year after Hijrah. 2 months after that, Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam gets Sayyidina Ali radiallahu anhu married to Sayyidah Fatima radiallahu ta'ala anha. A year later, in the third year after Hijrah, Sayyidina Hassan radiallahu anhu is born. In the fourth year after Hijrah, Sayyidina Hussein radiallahu anhu is born. Many people think that Hassan and Hussein were twins. Then in the fifth year, you have Sayyidina Muhsin, who is born and he passes away in infancy. In the sixth year, Sayyidah Zainab radiallahu ta'ala anha is born. And in the seventh year, you have Kulthum radiallahu ta'ala anha, who is born. And she is the one who marries Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anhu later on. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam greatly loved his grandchildren. Sayyidina Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu says that we went one day to the marketplace of Banu Qaynuqa, and When we came back, he just popped in by the home of Sayyidah Fatima and he asked, where are my grandchildren? The Sahabi says that on one occasion, I came past the Messenger ﷺ and I saw him on his fours. And Sayyidina Hassan and Sayyidina Hussein were on his back. So I said to them that, what a good mount you have. And Nabi ﷺ said, what good riders I have. What good riders I have. Aqra ibn Habis was a Sahabi who had 11 children. So he's seen Nabi ﷺ pick up one of his grandchildren, either Sayyidina Hassan or Hussein, and he kissed him. And then Aqra seen this and he found it strange and he says that, O Nabi of Allah, you kiss your grandchildren. So Nabi ﷺ, he says, yes. So he says, I have 11 grandchildren, I haven't kissed any one of them. So Nabi ﷺ said, what can I do if Allah hasn't put mercy in your heart? What can I do if Allah hasn't put mercy in your heart? Those who do not show mercy, mercy will not be shown to them. Nabi ﷺ was performing salah in Masjid Nabawi. And Sayyidina Hassan and Sayyidina Hussein, the two small boys, come running in. And they jump on their grandfather. And the Sahaba radiallahu anhum see them coming, so want to stop them. Nabi ﷺ indicates that leave them. And then Nabi ﷺ completes his salah and he puts them on his lap and he says that, Oh Allah, I love them. Love those who love them. And he said, فَأَحِبُّوهُمَا. He instructed the Sahaba that you should also have love for Sayyidina Hassan and Sayyidina Hussein. So this was the close position that they had in the heart of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Throughout his life, he always looked out for them. And as time progressed, and it was now nearing his end, then Sayyidah Fatima radiallahu ta'ala anha brought her two sons to sit with the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And they said, O Nabi Allah, give some wasiyat with regards to them. And Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, as for Hassan, he has my dignity and leadership. And as for Hussein, he has my generosity and bravery. There was an occasion where the two boys were wrestling. That's how boys play. And when Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam seen this, he started saying that, go Hassan, go. He started supporting Hassan. So Sayyidah Fatima, hearing this, said, the mother is always looking out for the grandfather to say, I think that's your favorite one, you favoring him. She says that, I think you favoring Hassan because he's older. So Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, no, Jibreel is saying, go Hussein. When Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam passed away, Sayyidina Hassan was 6 years old, Sayyidina Hussein was 5 years old. And at that time, Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said that, إِنَّهُمَا سَيِّدَا شَبَابِ أَهْلِ الْجَنَّةِ, that they will be the leaders of the youth of Jannah. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam passes away in around the 11th year after Hijrah. Sayyidina Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu becomes the Khalif. And he pays special attention to them. One day, he performed the salah in the masjid, and while leaving the masjid, he comes across Sayyidina Hussein, who's still a young boy. He picks him up and puts him on his shoulders, and he starts walking with him. Then he passes by their father, Sayyidina Ali radiallahu anhu. So he tells Sayyidina Ali, Shabihun bin Nabi, laysa bi shabihin bi Ali, that he resembles the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He doesn't resemble Ali. And Sayyidina Ali radiallahu anhu smiles and says, yes, you're right. It's an honor for him that his son resembles the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And this is how Sayyidina Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu paid special attention to them. And this was the loving relationship that existed between Sayyidina Abu Bakr and Sayyidina Ali radiallahu anhu. Joking, enjoying a lighter moment in that way, like friends. 13 years after Hijrah, 2 years and 7 months later, Sayyidina Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu passes away. Sayyidina Umar bin Khattab is appointed as the Khalif. And throughout this time, he pays special attention to Sayyidina Hassan and Sayyidina Hussein. In fact, on one occasion, there were certain garments that were brought from Yemen. So the Amir al-Mu'mineen Sayyidina Umar distributes it amongst everyone. Everybody gets a set. And he had given something for Sayyidina Hassan and Sayyidina Hussein. Then everyone adorned themselves with the garments and they came out from their homes to greet the Amirul Mu'mineen who was sitting in Masjid Nabawi between the Mimbar and the Rawdah of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Everyone thanking him for the gesture that he had shown. And then Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anhu sees Sayyidina Hassan and Sayyidina Hussein coming out and they didn't have the new Yemeni garment on. So perhaps it was too big or too small. But he felt restless. Everyone is thanking him, but they can see there's some concern on his face. He's not at ease. Until eventually he makes arrangement that special garments be brought from Yemen that are suitable and fit the two boys. Eventually they are made to wear that and now he feels satisfied. He then goes to Sayyidina Ali radiallahu anhu and he says that, I want to marry your daughter Kulthum. So Sayyidina Ali says that I had intention to get her married to one of Ja'far's children. So Sayyidina Umar says, get her married to me because there's no one who will appreciate her nobility like me. He says that Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said that all lineage and all connection will end on the day of Qiyamah except my family connection. And it is my intention that I want to marry her solely that I can be part of the family of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So Sayyidina Ali radiallahu anhu gets Kulthum radiallahu anha married to Sayyidina Umar. And Sayyidina Umar, after the nikah, he goes to a group of Muhajirin and Ansar and he tells them, congratulate me. And they ask what happened. He says that I have married the granddaughter of the Messenger Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. 10 years and 7 months later, in the 23rd year after Hijrah, Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anhu is martyred. And then Sayyidina Uthman radiallahu anhu takes over the Khilafah. After the mutual consultation, he is appointed. This is a period of strife, and there was a period then where the expansion had taken place. Sayyidina Uthman radiallahu anhu sends an expedition to North Africa, and there are members from the Ahlul Bayt who joined that expedition. Then he sends an expedition to Khurasan and other areas, and Sayyidina Hassan and Sayyidina Hussein are part of that expedition. And they return to Madinatul Munawwara after that successful. And Sayyidina Uthman is very happy to see them. There is this individual from Yemen by the name of Abdullah bin Sabah. He's actually a Jew. But he penetrates the Muslim ranks, portraying himself to be a Muslim. And he then raises certain unfounded objections against Sayyidina Uthman, that he was accused of nepotism, that he had given position to his family members and other unfounded accusations. And there was a group of rebels that gathered outside the home of Sayyidina Uthman radiallahu anhu, bidding for his blood. Sayyidina Ali radiallahu anhu comes to Sayyidina Uthman's home. Sayyidina Uthman is now 82 years old. It is now the 35th year after Hijrah, in the month of Zul Hijjah. Sayyidina Ali comes with his two sons, Sayyidina Hassan and Hussein, and he says to Sayyidina Uthman, these people look hell-bent on their intention. And I see that they may attack you any moment. If you give me permission, I will go and fight them. And if you do not want that, then allow me to station my two sons, Hassan and Hussein, here at your home to protect you. Sayyidina Uthman radiallahu anhu says that, I do not want that the blood of a believer be spilt because of me. Take your sons with you home. And these rebels then jump the wall of the home of Sayyidina Uthman. They attack him while he is reciting the Noble Quran. And his wife, who was with him at that time, tell the rebels that whether you kill this old man or you leave him alive, remember that this is a man who would stand and read the Quran in one rakat. And they kill him, they martyr him in a brutal way, slaughtering him from one side to the other. And a drop of his blood falls on the mushaf that is in front of him, which The verse is, فَسَيَكْفِيكَهُمُ اللَّهُ. Allah will be sufficient for you. He was happy with the decree of Allah. And it was the night before that he saw a dream in which he was making iftar with the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. After Sayyidina Uthman is martyred, there is this issue now of the retribution of the blood of Sayyidina Uthman, which became a very contentious issue. And it was a very difficult time. And this is what then led to subsequent issues that came about. Sayyidina Ali radiallahu anhu then becomes the Khalif in the 35th year after Hijrah. During this time, the issue of the blood of Sayyidina Uthman becomes a major issue, and there are those who then start to oppose Sayyidina Ali. The group that is who has been created by Abdullah bin Saba, then the Jews who penetrate the ranks of the Muslims on each side or each group, always creating mischief and initiating fighting at various junctures, creating this discord. We have then the issue that come about in terms of the subsequent battle that took place in the form of the Battle of Jamal and Siffin in the 37th year after Hijrah, where Sayyidina Ali radiallahu anhu and Sayyidina Muawiyah radiallahu ta'ala anhu went to battle. And after this battle, Sayyidina Ali radiallahu anhu walked amongst the martyrs, and he said that he walked by the martyrs of one side and he said, they're in Jannah. And then he walked by the martyrs of the other side and he said, they are in Jannah. And he said, then Allah will judge between me and Sayyidina Muawiyah. There's difference of opinion what then happened. Sayyidina Muawiyah may have already taken bay'at from the people of Sham, and there were now two subsequent khilafats. Or it may have been that Sayyidina Ali remained the Khalif until the end of his life, which in the 40th year after Hijrah, Abdurrahman bin Muljim then attacked Sayyidina Ali radiallahu anhu on a Friday morning after he performed the Fajr Salah. And he's leaving the masjid. And Abdurrahman bin Muljim attacks him and says that I attacked him with a sword which I spent 1,000 to purchase the sword. And I put so much poison on it that it would be sufficient to kill everyone in Medina. Sayyidina Ali radiallahu anhu is martyred in this particular manner in the 40th year after Hijrah. After Sayyidina Ali radiallahu anhu, his son Sayyidina Hassan radiallahu anhu becomes the Khalif. And he remains the Khalif for 6 to 8 months. And after that he enters into a truce with Sayyidina Muawiyah radiallahu anhu, and he relinquishes the Khilafah. And he hands it over to Sayyidina Muawiyah radiallahu ta'ala anhu. And he becomes the first Khalif to step down from the position. And Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam had prophesied with Sayyidina Hassan, and he said that this son of mine will bring together two groups of the believers. And that is what he did. He brought together two groups of the believers. And he remained the Khalif for 6 to 8 months. With the ending of his Khilafah, that brought to end a 30-year period, which Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that the Khilafah will remain for 30 years, and after that there will be kingdomship. In the 40th year after Hijrah, Sayyidina Muawiyah radiallahu anhu becomes the Khalif. And his base is now in Damascus. He is the brother-in-law of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam was married to his sister Habiba radiallahu anha. He was also amongst the honorable scribes of Wahi. When revelation would come down, Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam would call him to write and record the revelation. And Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, he made dua for him, Allahumma hdihi wahdi bihi. Oh Allah, guide him and guide others through him. Sayyidina Muawiyah radiallahu anhu then expands the Muslim Ummah. And his period, which was a 20-year period, was a period of great progress that had taken place in the Muslim Ummah. There was many conquests that were fulfilled, and there were many other expeditions that were fulfilled. At the time when Sayyidina Uthman was martyred, at that time also, Sayyidina Muawiyah radiallahu anhu had his son Yazid. He was born in the 35th year after Hijrah. 10 years into the Khilafah of Sayyidina Muawiyah radiallahu anhum, Sayyidina Hassan radiallahu anhu passes away. As time now passes and Sayyidina Muawiyah is advancing in age, he then starts to think about what will happen after me. So he starts consulting various Sahaba radiallahu anhum. Amongst the Sahaba radiallahu anhu, Sayyidina Mughira bin Shu'bah suggests to him that your son Yazid is capable and perhaps he should take over. Sayyidina Muawiyah radiallahu anhu, 2 or 3 years before he passes away, undertakes the journey of Hajj. And in Hajj, he then has a special meeting and he runs by the Sahaba who are present at that time, that after me, I would like to appoint my son Yazid. What do you have to say about this? When the idea came up initially, there were 5 people who had reservations at this point. The first being Abdurrahman bin Abi Bakr. The second being Sayyidina Abdullah bin Umar radiallahu anhu, Sayyidina Abdullah bin Abbas radiallahu anhu, Sayyidina Abdullah bin Zubair, and Sayyidina Hassan radiallahu anhum. Then Sayyidina Abdurrahman bin Abi Bakr passes away before Sayyidina Muawiyah. Sayyidina Muawiyah then passes away, and subsequent to, on his last moments or before that, he then appoints his son Yazid as the Khalifa. The people of Damascus, the people of Syria immediately pledged their allegiance. And then followed by that, Yazid then sends the message to the governor of Makkatul Mukarramah, Walid bin Utbah, that he should go to, in Makkatul Mukarramah, he should go to Madinatul Munawwarah, and he should take the pledge of Bay'at from Abdullah bin Zubair, from Sayyidina Hussein, and all those that are present. So he goes then to take the pledge of Bay'at from those that are present at that time. Sayyidina Abdullah bin Zubair, in fact it was Sayyidina Abdullah bin Abbas and Sayyidina Abdullah bin Umar, they pledged their allegiance to Yazid. He then goes to Madinatul Munawwarah, and he presents the matter to the 2 individuals who are there, Abdullah bin Zubair and Sayyidina Hussein radiallahu anhum. And it was late at night when he met with Sayyidina Hussein. So Sayyidina Hussein radiallahu anhu said to Walid that, look, I am a public personality. I will not take the bet in private like this. I will go in an open gathering and I will pledge my allegiance to Yazid and I will give the bet in that way. Abdullah bin Zubair at that time remains the person who is opposed to Yazid becoming the Khalif. So he then at night leaves Madinatul Munawwarah and travels to Makkatul Mukarramah. Sayyidina Hussein radiallahu anhu learns about the departure of Sayyidina Abdullah bin Zubair radiallahu anhu, and he's concerned about this. So the next day, he doesn't meet Walid to pledge the allegiance, but he's concerned for Abdullah bin Zubair having traveled to Makkah. He also then departs to Makkatul Mukarramah. And he comes to Makkatul Mukarramah. In Makkatul Mukarramah, he then stays at the home of Abbas radiallahu anhum. And Abdullah bin Zubair stays at a place at Hijr in Makkatul Mukarramah. And now the issue is being discussed. In the interim period, the people of Kufa had started writing letters to Sayyidina Hussein radiallahu anhu that we are not happy. Come to us. We will honor you. We will pledge our allegiance to you. There are thousands that are waiting for you here. So this particular idea is then brought up of travel towards Kufa. And Sayyidina Hussein is concerned about what is happening in Kufa and what may transpire and the consequences of that. He then entertains the idea of traveling to Kufa. But the two Sahaba who are there, Sayyidina Abdullah bin Sayyidina Abdullah bin Abbas and Sayyidina Abdullah bin Umar, they dissuade him and they try to discourage him in saying that those people of Kufa are not trustworthy people. They're not stable people. They are bad character. They are the very ones who martyred your father and perhaps may have even martyred your brother, Sayyidina Hassan. So don't go there. So at this point, the idea of traveling to Kufa remained with Sayyidina Hussein radiallahu anhu. But he was concerned about, what would be the consequences, and if he goes there, what would happen. So to manage the situation, what he decides is that his brother-in-law and his cousin, Muslim bin Aqil, should be sent to Kufa first, and he will then gauge the situation. In the interim, there's also 60 people from Kufa that come to Makkatul Mukarramah to meet Sayyidina Hussein and try to convince him to come to Kufa. And they say that there are 100,000 people waiting in Kufa to pledge their allegiance to Sayyidina Hussein radiallahu anhum. So Sayyidina Hussein sends his brother-in-law, Muslim bin Aqil, who travels to Kufa. He comes to Kufa, and as he enters Kufa, everybody is waiting for him. Immediately, 12,000 people pledge their allegiance to Muslim bin Aqil. He's very happy with the reception, and he immediately writes back a message to say, the reception in Kufa has been good, and everything looks favorable in Kufa. Sayyidina Nu'man bin Bashir radiallahu anhu, Sahabi, is the governor of Kufa. So he sees what's going on, but he doesn't do anything. There's obviously some sort of an uprising that is taking place here. So news now reaches Yazid, who's in Damascus. So he then sends from Damascus a person by the name of Ubaidullah bin Ziyad. And as a Khalif, you obviously need compliance. So he sent Ubaidullah bin Ziyad to attend to the matters what are unfolding in Kufa. Ubaidullah bin Ziyad travels from Damascus to Kufa. He comes into Kufa with his face covered. The people of Kufa come out to welcome him, initially thinking that this is Sayyidina Hussein who came to Kufa. Soon they realize that it's not Sayyidina Hussein, but it is Ubaidullah bin Ziyad who has been sent by Yazid. He now dismisses Nu'man bin Bashir radiallahu anhu as the governor, and he now takes over. And he now starts tracking down the 12,000 people who had pledged their allegiance to Muslim bin Aqil. And that 12 started to disperse slowly. And the numbers started to dwindle. Sayyidina Muslim bin Aqil is now concerned because his support is going away. Eventually he goes to the home of Hani bin Urwa al-Muradi, and he takes refuge in his home. Ubaidullah bin Ziyad comes and he lays siege on the home. He then calls out Hani and he asks him that, is Muslim here? And he says that yes, he is here. So he asks him that, why are you giving him protection? He says, no, he came here on his own to take protection in my home. Ubaidullah bin Ziyad then slays Hani and Muslim bin Aqil. In the meantime, what is happening in Makkatul Mukarramah? Sayyidina Hussein radiallahu anhu sets off with a caravan of around 100 people. He has the members of the Ahl Bayt. He has some of his family members, his wives, his children, and he has those 60 people of Kufa who had come to convince him to travel. The fact that he takes his wives and children with him and a small contingent of 100 people shows that it was never his intention to go to jihad. There was no fighting on his mind at that time. He was going there to quell the uprising that was unfolding in Kufa. That was his intention. So nevertheless, he sets out with a small group towards Kufa. As he's traveling from Makkah to Al-Mukarramah towards Kufa, he comes to a place which is called Tha'laba. And here, the news is brought to him by Hur bin Yazid that what has subsequently transpired in Kufa is that Ubaidullah bin Ziyad has entered Kufa and they have slain Muslim bin Aqil, and the conditions in Kufa are not favorable, and that he should go back. But Muslim bin Aqil's brother is also in the caravan of Sayyidina Hussein radiallahu anhum. And he tells Sayyidina Hussein radiallahu anhu that we've come so far and they have now martyred one of us. It only behoves us that we continue with the journey. So they continue with the journey. In the meantime, Ubaidullah bin Ziyad prepares an army of 4,000 individuals. And that army is then led by Umar bin Sa'd bin Abi Waqqas. Now, as we all know, Sa'd bin Abi Waqqas was from the Ashara Mubashara, the 10 who were given glad tidings of Jannah. And Umar was the leader that was appointed, Umar bin Sa'd bin Abi Waqqas, to lead this army to stop Sayyidina Hussein's caravan from coming into Kufa. And many of those who initially pledged their allegiance to Muslim bin Aqil in Kufa, seeing that the tables had turned, had now joined the army of Umar bin Sa'd bin Abi Waqqas and joined him, coming out to stop Sayyidina Hussein's caravan from coming into Kufa. Sayyidina Hussein then proceeds on his journey and he reaches, Kufa is here, Makkah is here, they proceed and they reach a point which is Qadisiyah. At Qadisiyah, he then meets with Umar bin Sa'd bin Abi Waqqas. And Umar bin Sa'd bin Abi Waqqas then informs him that he will not be allowed to proceed any further to Kufa. Sayyidina Hussein radiallahu anhu presents to Umar bin Sa'd that here's 3 options. Allow me to choose any one of these options. On the one hand, allow me to divert and go to Damascus, and I will go and place my hand yadi fi yadi Yazid. I will go and pledge allegiance to Yazid. On the other hand, allow me to go back to Makkatul Mukarramah. On the third hand, allow me to go anywhere of the Muslim Khilafah, Turkestan, anywhere. I'll go there and fight for the Muslims and pass my life in that way. Give me one of these 3 options. So Umar bin Sa'd bin Abi Waqqas is in fact happy with these 3 options, and he sends the message back to Kufa, to Ubaidullah bin Ziyad, that this is what Sayyidina Hussein is saying, that give me one of these 3 options. And it is said that Ubaidullah bin Ziyad said that no, there's only one option now. The only option is that he must come here now and he must pledge allegiance to me. In the meantime, what has happened? This message now has to get to Sayyidina Hussein radiallahu anhum. That Qadisiyah, here is Kufa. Sayyidina Hussein has already changed the direction of his caravan, and he's already traveled for a few days, more than 80 kilometers towards Damascus. And he has reached Karbala. Karbala is not on the direct route from Makkah to Kufa. If you travel from Makkah to Kufa, you won't reach Karbala. Karbala is on the route from Qadisiyah to Damascus. So Sayyidina Hussein moved the direction of his caravan and he is now traveling to Damascus with the intention to pledge the allegiance to Yazid. The news then comes that there's only one thing that needs to be accepted, and that is that he needs to pledge his allegiance to Ubaidullah bin Ziyad. Other narrators say that those people who had written the letters to Sayyidina Hussein saying, "Come to Kufa, we are here," the names being the letters, Sayyidina Hussein had brought those letters with him. And it was the fear that he was now heading towards Damascus. And when he has a discussion with Yazid as to why he went to Kufa, he would say that these are the people that wrote letters to me, and therefore I was responding to that. So those very people who had written the letters calling Sayyidina Hussein to Kufa, they were now concerned about what is going to happen to them. And that is when, on the 10th of Muharram, in the 61st year after Hijrah, Sayyidina Hussein's caravan was at Karbala, and they came and they attacked him. And they attacked him in a gruesome manner. And the details of which we cannot say with absolute certainty what had happened. We know that he had one of his babies in his hand, and an arrow was fired at the baby. Furthermore, from the men, Zainul Abidin, Ali bin Hussein, was sick, and he was with the women, so he was the only man who survived. 17 of the Ahlul Bayt were all martyred at that point. During the time of Hajjaj bin Yusuf, there was a man came in his court, and Hajjaj was told that this is the killer of Sayyidina Hussein. So Hajjaj asked him that, "Are you the killer of Hussein?" And this person's name was Sinan bin Anas. So Hajjaj asked him, "Are you the killer of Sayyidina Hussein?" And he said, "Yes." He says he was a dark complexioned person with a long nose and a very, a very scary appearance. So in fact, Hajjaj then asked him then, "You the killer of Sayyidina Hussein, how did you kill him?" So he says, "I rammed into him with my spear, and then I started chopping his body." Hajjaj then said to him that Allah will never gather you and Hussein in the same abode. There's also a person by the name of Khawlay, and he was the one who then decapitated the Mubarak head of Sayyidina Hussein radiallahu anhu. What happens now is the Mubarak head of Sayyidina Hussein is taken from Karbala to Kufa, and it is presented to Ubaidullah bin Ziyad together with the women who survived. The women are brought to Kufa, and it is presented before Ubaidullah bin Ziyad, and he has a stick with him, and the Mubarak head is placed before him. So he is taking his stick and prodding the face of Sayyidina Hussein radiallahu anhu. And the great Sahabi Anas bin Malik radiallahu anhu is present. And then Ubaidullah bin Ziyad makes a comment about the beauty of Sayyidina Hussein. And Anas bin Malik sees all of this, and he starts to weep profusely. And he says to him, "اقبض يمينك والقبيذك مجرما وكفاك إثما وكفاك مجرما دخلت ليلا فرأيت حسينا وسيدكم يقبل ذا الفما." That, "Woe, O Ubaidullah." His mother's name was Marjana, or the son of Marjana. "You've transgressed all limits. Your sins have gone beyond all what we could imagination. does it not bother you that I was seen Hussein at night, and the very lips that you are putting your stick on, the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam was kissing those lips. The Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam was kissing those lips. Sayyidina Ali radiallahu anhu was going to the Battle of Siffin, and Abdullah bin Nujay narrates, and he says that his father Nujay was the attendant of Sayyidina Ali. He would always be with him, attend to his tahara, meaning his water and all his other amenities. And he says that as we were walking, Sayyidina Ali then said, Isbir ya Abu Abdullah, Isbir ya Abu Abdullah. He called out that, be patient, O Abu Abdullah, be patient, O Abu Abdullah. So Nujay then asked, Oh Ali, what is this that you're saying? So he says that one night I came to Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and I found Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam crying. Tears were rolling from his eyes. And I asked Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, Oh Nabi of Allah, what has perturbed you? Has someone made you angry? Has someone, caused harm to you? And Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam said that Jibreel has just come to me and he's left. And Jibreel has informed me that your son Hussein will be martyred on the banks of the Euphrates. And then Jibreel asked me, do you want to smell the sand on which he will fall? And Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam said yes. And that sand was brought to Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam smelled the sand. And when that happened, Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, La amliku aynayya. I could not control my eyes, and that is what brings me to tears. So this was Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam's grief over what was to come. What is our grief of what has happened? How do we reflect on this? How do we look at it? The big question then is that who is really responsible for this? What had transpired? So essentially, when you look at it, it was the people of Kufa. They're the ones who were acting treacherously. And within their ranks, it is those very followers of Abdullah bin Sabah, the Sabaeans, who were influenced by the Jews. They are the ones who called Sayyidina Hussein to Kufa, yet they abandoned him when he needed. And some narrations indicate that they are the very ones who led the attack against him. And that is why Shahr bin Hawshab, rahimahumullah, narrates, and he says that when the news was brought to Salama radiallahu anha of the martyrdom of Sayyidina Hussein, and she then said that, may the curse of Allah be on the people of Kufa. They are the ones who called Sayyidina Hussein and then they fought him. May Allah's curse be upon them. One day during the season of Hajj, someone came to Sayyidina Abdullah bin Umar radiallahu anhum and asked him, what is the ruling with regards to the blood of a mosquito, ba'udah? So Sayyidina Abdullah bin Umar radiallahu anhu asked him, from where are you? So he said, from Kufa. He says, from Kufa, and you ask me about the blood of the mosquito, yet you are the ones who took the blood of the grandson of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So the blame squarely on the people of Kufa. They are the ones that were responsible for this heinous crime that was perpetrated. Now when we look at the context of what had transpired, thereafter the Mubarak head was then taken from Kufa to Damascus, and the Ahl Bayt was then taken to Damascus, presented before Yazid. And when he seen the Mubarak head of Sayyidina Hussein, he then expressed his grief at that point, and he said that may the curse of Allah be on Ubaidullah bin Ziyad. When Sayyidina Hussein had made three options. Either you allow him to come to me, or you allow him to return, or that you allow him to go to the far border post. Yet you forced him, and this was the end result. And as a result of this, now you find that from now till the end of time, you'll find that the pious and the non-pious will have hatred for me. Yazid then made the arrangements for the Ahlul Bayt to return to Madinatul Munawwarah. And they then returned to Madinatul Munawwarah. When we look at this particular episode, some concluding remarks, that it was one of the greatest tragedies to befall this ummah. And we grieve for this tragedy. Yet it was an honor in the right of Sayyidina Hussein that Allah Rabbul Izzah had granted him the privilege of Shahada. The events of Ashura are an important part of Shia spirituality because there's nothing more to them. And it is said that because the people of Kufa were the very ones that abandoned Sayyidina Hussein, the next year they went out to Karbala to make tawbah and cry and mourn over what happened. And that is where the mourning year in and year out of Karbala began. That is the origins of it. When this particular episodes are narrated, many people view it in black and white. You have the force of evil, the force of truth. The force of evil, Yazid, the force of truth, Sayyidina Hussein. You have right versus wrong, oppression versus, standing up against justice. And that is how it is viewed. When you look at the nuances of everything, you realize that it is not just all that. There were many other issues that were at play at that time. And as with the actual events, you have those who were the villains would obviously narrate their accord. And the actual people who were the victims were martyred. Sayyid Zainul Abidin, who was the son of Sayyidina Hussein radiallahu anhu, survived, but he was with the women. So he didn't actually see what had transpired. And therefore, you have a variety of narrations that have been reported on this particular issue. And therefore, what I say today, and what you will hear from other ulama and what you will read, no one can say that conclusively this is it and there is no room for adjustment. There will be different reports that you will come across because there was a lot of, it is not like Quran and Hadith that were reported and conveyed with authenticity and with a clear transmitted chain. These are historical accounts of events that occurred. And the human element of people's affinity and manipulation has all been interpolated into this. So different people, information reached them, they were then, their sentiment was according to that sentiment. And therefore, you'll have varying accounts of who is responsible and who are the people that actually carried out this heinous act. Nevertheless, it is one of the greatest tragedies to befall this ummah. There is no doubt about that. And with regards to Yazid, Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahumullah said, La nuhibbuhu, we don't love him, wala nal'anu, nor do we curse him. He wasn't an excessively pious man that you needed to have love for him, nor as believers do we curse anyone. Nothing is dependent on that. So, silence in this regard is the safest position. To conclude, Allama Ibn Kathir rahimahumullah has mentioned, and he says that Sayyidina Hussein's martyrdom was a great tragedy to befall this ummah. And Sayyidina Hussein was an outstanding individual in his worship, in his courage, in his generosity, in his devotion. And he was martyred unjustly. There is no doubt about that. But then Sayyidina Allama Ibn Kathir rahimahullah says, but there is no goodness in what the Shias do in mourning the death of Sayyidina Hussein radiyallahu ta'ala anhum. Because Sayyidina Hussein was a great individual, but his father, Sayyidina Ali, was even greater than him. And his father was martyred on the 17th of Ramadan, and there is no one who mourns the anniversary of the death of his father. And greater than his father was Sayyidina Uthman radiallahu anhu, the unanimous belief of the Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah. And he was martyred in the month of Dhul Hijjah, and there's no one that mourns the anniversary of his demise or his martyrdom. And even greater than him was Sayyidina Umar bin Khattab radiallahu anhum. And he was martyred while performing the Fajr Salah for the Mu'mineen in Masjid Nabawi. But we do not mourn the anniversary of his death. And the same with Sayyidina Abu Bakr, who passed away before him. And we do not mourn his death. Nor do we mourn the death of the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And therefore, Sayyidina Allama ibn Kathir rahimahullah ends off when he says, most appropriate for this is the narration which Ali bin Hussein, Zainul Abidin rahimahumullah, narrates from his grandfather, Sayyidina Ali radiallahu anhu, and he says, when there's any difficulty that has afflicted you, and at any stage, no matter how far away from the difficulty, what period of time has passed, when you remember that difficulty, then you say, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Verily to Allah we belong, and to Him is our return. And when you say that, then Allah will grant you the reward of patience every time you say that. So that is what we say with regards to this entire episode, that Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. It is amongst the saddest events of the history of Islam, yet a very delicate one. And what do we take forward from here? There is a narration in which the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that whoever wants to have his deeds weighed in the most fullest scale on the day of Qiyamah, then he should recite durood upon me in the way, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa azwajihi ummahatil mu'minina wa ahli baytihi kama sallaita ala ali Ibrahima innaka hamidun majid. Recite this, which is amongst the 40 duroods in the compilation, and you will get the most complete reward, and your scales will be brimming on the day of Qiyamah. Mulana Yusuf Mutala rahmatullah alayhi from the United Kingdom, who was a Khalifa of Hazrat Sheikh rahimahullah. And he says, I met Hazrat Sheikh in Madinatul Munawwara on the 10th of Muharram. And Hazrat Sheikh asked him that, what have you been doing these days? How are you? So he said that everything's fine as per normal. So he says that how can everything be normal? That since the beginning of the 10 days of Muharram, every day I've been reciting a complete Quran and sending Isal Sawab to the Ahlul Bayt. So this is the real way in which we show our attachment, by reciting durood and by sending Isal Sawab. Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Laysa minna man daraba al-juyub wa daraba al-khuyud wa shaqqa al-juyub." That those are not from amongst us who mourn or display mourning by slapping their cheeks and tearing their pockets. Meaning that is not our way. May Allah Rabbul Izzah make us from the true lovers of the Ahlul Bayt. May Allah grant us the correct perspective. May Allah protect the Aqidah of our progeny and keep us on the Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين.